Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Pullbox Pals. I am Mark, and this is my fellow monk over here, just shaking his fist like nobody's business.
Hey, my fellow monk. Either means that I am a monk along with you, or that
That is
I'm your fellow.
well, you're my fellow, but you're monk.
I am
You're
your
a
fellow
fellow
monk.
monk.
I am your fellow monk.
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
I'm happy about where we're currently at on this. If you're watching the video, our
Yeah.
heads looking comparable size.
Oh yeah. Let me get closer.
Oh, look at that! Wow. Okay.
Well,
So, Mark, I've got a
yeah.
question for you.
Yeah. What's up, man?
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. It's my birthday week.
It's your birthday week.
It's my birthday week.
Oh my
My
gosh.
birthday's on Saturday, and man, you're saying that with just such surprise.
So, full disclosure, this is our second attempt at this. If you're watching this live, you probably would have seen that. If you're listening back, hopefully you're listening back to a saved full podcast. But we had some technical difficulties. But
we're
off
back
to the races again. It is Mark's birthday. He's turning 36 this weekend. Correct?
I'm turning 36. That is correct.
Wow.
And I was just talking about how I'm kind of looking at the 6-year segments of my life and the important things that happened within them, and I feel like I could write a book. Maybe
you should write a book, buddy. Why not?
I might. I do have a really good title for it.
Oh, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
I won't. It's a secret.
You want to sit on titles are good. You want to sit on those, or titles are important. I just said titles are good. Titles are bad sometimes.
Titles are good. I also like when you find a title that has a good subtitle to reinforce the title.
I think you would have to have a subtitle nowadays, right? Like you can't just have something called a thing. Like everything has to have like a little punch up on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, because how many titles can stand alone on their own anymore? Like you see titles
I guess that's
regurgitated.
True.
So yeah, I guess a subtitle in some sense is needed. But
how good are you at remembering like the subtitles to like Moon Knight? Like Moon Knight that happened in God and Kings or whatever, the arc names.
Yeah. I think it just has to depend on what it was. Because there's some of them though, and mostly just like classics that stand out to me. Like a lot of Batman arcs from the past, like I can't. They're like unforgettable. I mean, there's a Killing Joke. There's Year Zero.
Yeah, but those are the name of like trade paperbacks and like standalone like miniseries. I'm thinking of like if there's like Captain America and like Dimension. It's like Castaway and Dimension Z. Those kind of arc names.
Okay.
Those are a little bit, I think, harder, but they're also like I just made a joke about it, but I know that there's a Hulk arc called God and Monsters because I was looking around like at a discount store around here that has comic books in it, and one of the arcs of Hulk was called God and Monsters, and then I saw another one that was like God and Kings, and I forget whose that was, but I'm like, man, like you gotta be a little bit more creative with your titles instead of just I think I have God and Kings up here because now I'm remembering it's an all new Invaders. The Invaders are a really cool group that kind of gets slept on. That'd be a cool MCU thing that I don't think they won't be able to ever do, because
if they did, it would probably be a show.
Yeah, but it wouldn't make any sense that like Cap and Bucky had these adventures that we don't know about with a Human Torch and it's not and he's not even human. He's a synthetic man, and there's also Namor. So a lot of this is kind of not.
Man, there's a huge call for Namor.
Hell yeah, man! I want him so
huge.
Yeah, I think Namor would do very well.
Yeah, but let's talk MCU. So new Moon Knight came out this week. I sadly have not finished watching it because I keep starting it like right before I typically fall asleep, and so it's in pieces.
Well, Mark, that kind of leads me to ask you, are you experiencing Moon Knight-esque phenomenons where you're blacking out and you're coming back Are you covered in blood? How are your fist? Do
I'll
you
put.
have any?
I definitely have been having conversations with myself in the mirror.
Or do you have
That
any trinkets that
don't.
look like they come straight out of Aladdin?
Oh, sometimes, yeah. They're just in
But
my hand and bloody. Yeah.
yeah. Oh man. Okay, so I watched the latest episode. Honestly, it was my least favorite out of all three, but it's still a great series. This is probably for me, outside of like ironically enough, Hawkeye has the most rewatchability. Maybe
Hmm.
I would really like to rewatch WandaVision, but I
Yeah.
just haven't gotten around to doing that yet.
I want to, now that you say that, and too, because last week I kind of forgot about Hawkeye. Um,
Yeah, you were so bold. I was thinking about that after we were done. I'm just like, I think he missed one, and he was so
I did
confident with his
well,
number at
but
first.
I even said, like, I think I may have missed one, and I did bring it up. Like,
Yeah,
oh, it was
you did.
Hawkeye. I forgot about Hawkeye. Um, Hawkeye was like interesting, and I do want to watch it again because there's a lot of questions to be asked, and I think I might agree with you that it probably does have more rewatchability value to it, because it wasn't directly connected, as far as I can tell, to what's already come out in the MCU, where it's just like they all seem like they have a point leading up to the movies. I don't really know what like Hawkeye is going for. Um,
Yeah, but I think it can just be a standalone story and just be a beautiful day in the life of Hawkeye, you
yeah,
know? It doesn't
yeah,
have to
and
always be multiversal things. And that's kind of I just want to point this out before he gets mad at me for ignoring his comment. That not that he would do that, but Anthony mentioned the last trailer for Doctor Strange also came out, which I just bought my tickets
yeah,
for, I think this week as well. I'm trying to not watch any trailers for that because honestly, I feel like they've given away a lot already, and
yeah.
I just kind of want to go in as blind as
I,
possible.
so you're like me then. You don't like spoilers going in.
I do for like lesser movies that I'm less interested in, but this one seems like it's going to be. Here's what I'm going to say. I hope that this is kind of like a nice cap on whatever this multiverse thing is. I think it's going to be a little bit different when um maybe because Kang's coming up, so I don't really
Yeah,
know what the future is, and maybe it will be more multiversal things. But I think that they need a coherent, like this is the multiverse, and hopefully that is what happens in the multiverse of madness. I hope they
yeah,
go into the Illuminati room and Professor Stewart's like, there is the multiverse, and I come from a universe where I wasn't exploded, and then
yeah.
spoiler alert, she probably explodes him. So
Well, and I think that you're going to be right, though, because back before any of Phase 4 released, Feige himself said, like, the main things that you want to pay attention to are WandaVision, Spider-Man, and the new Doctor Strange movie, because they were all directly linked in some way. I was kind of surprised after Loki came out that that wasn't included, because it seems like Loki is pretty pivotal for the multiverse, but it also seems like, based on what Feige said, that I think after we see the new Doctor Strange movie, I think that's going to be the actual catalyst where things like are going to turn, and we're going to be like, okay, so this is what we're sitting in. And then the next thing that comes out, I believe, is Thor: Love and Thunder.
yeah,
And
which I would
you know,
imagine is probably not going to have anything to do with. It's probably just going to be a fun romp.
it might be a fun romp, but I mean, there's so many questions though too to ask, because I mean, Mjolnir is returning, but we saw Mjolnir get crushed,
Yeah.
the hammer. So there has to be some aspect of the multiverse to it. But
No, if
yeah,
you see in some promotional footage, it looks like it's a reassembled because it looks like the pieces have come back together because it looks
yeah,
destroyed and like put back together. But I don't know. Maybe.
yeah,
I, who knows? Like maybe they could just be going through the multiverse because literally, like it's out in like what 4 months, less than that, and we haven't seen
it's July.
anything from it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so like we haven't seen anything for that.
yeah. Well,
So
Disney lately has been really playing a lot of stuff pretty close to the chest in terms of when they release trailers and whatnot lately. Because even with like in the Star Wars world, it's like we still haven't really seen much from Kenobi, but it's coming up pretty quick.
Well, I don't want to keep going on this because I want to
Yeah,
get into
let's not.
comics, but
Let's do it.
yeah, let's just get into comics. We'll start a side podcast called Ticket Stub Buds.
That was great, right off the bat there. I like
Wow,
that.
maybe
That's
we'll do
a
that. We'll see how this goes.
ticket stub buds.
Wow,
Wow.
frick. Well,
Well,
buddy,
hey
do you
man,
want
what
me
did
to?
you? Yeah, get into what you got this week. What did you pull
Alrighty.
out of that box?
Oh, this is what's really funny is the thing that I had on the top of the list was from not. Anyways, it doesn't matter. What I got this week, my friend Mark, it would be Hit Me #2. I reviewed issue #1. Did I? Or I can't
I
remember.
believe you did.
I might have mentioned. I know I bought this in the course of this podcast's existence, issue #1. And I just, to be honest, it was kind of a little like too much for me to begin with. But I really love the art. I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to dive into issue #2, and hopefully it's a little bit more story driven and not so much about the characters. Next, I'm trying to figure out where to put my comics. I'm just literally drowning in comics over here. Would be Rain #4. So not to jump ahead. Oh, and by the way, that Hit Me #2 was from AWA Upshot Studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's who put that out. This is from Image Comics, and I had Rain #3 kind of just sitting on my to read pile for a while, and I got back to it last night because I remembered that this was coming out today. So I thought, I'm like, oh, that'll be great. It'd be easy for me to just kind of jump right back in and pick up where I kind of left off. And I never issue number. Well, I'm gonna start going to. I want to actually review it later, but
Yeah.
let me just say I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to talking about it with you. Yeah, and I haven't read #4 yet, but I'm really looking forward to doing that. And this I picked up mostly just out of the novelty of it all. But it is Marvel. It's from Marvel. It's X-Men House of 92. Is that what it? Yeah,
Yeah.
House. Yeah. And I got this just kind of because it's just a 5-off miniseries, and so I thought it'd be a lot of fun to kind of just dive into the X-Men world and just see what the heck those guys are up to. It's kind of confusing reading the X-Men now. I have House of X and House of M. I have a trade paperback of that, and I'll give it a go sometime. But boy, howdy,
you haven't read those yet?
I got like halfway through, and I'm just like, man, this is just it's so hard to follow.
I'll do you one better. I would say before you even get to House of M, catch up on Scarlet Witch. Like anything that's like key to her story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's kind of key going into House of M is just understanding her arc, because House of M, sorry to go back to the MCU, is a very big part of WandaVision in terms of
right.
Just exploring who the character of Wanda / Scarlet Witch is. Right. But then again, also, have you noticed that when Disney is pulling a new Marvel thing out of their hat, that they always are releasing these kind of comical 5-arc issue things? Like they did it with Moon Knight right before Black Widow came out. We had a Taskmaster one, which was like, honestly, it was hilarious. I don't know if they meant it to be funny, to be honest, but like, yeah, the dialogue of Taskmaster, I was what's the old saying? Rolling on the floor laughing.
That's what that is the old saying.
Yeah.
But the thing that I loved most about this comic was just I am a huge fan of this version of Cyclops. Like,
yeah,
he's just such a strong, confident leader. He's got a great outfit. Like, I love that Scott Summers.
That's mine too. That's my dream Scott Summers. That's the one I'm familiar with. I always remember as a kid too, when the show first came out, I was being like, why in the old ones did they cover his hair? You know, he had like a swim cap cowl on. Like,
yeah, it's no good. He's got beautiful hair.
You got to let those locks show.
All right, so I got another one for you.
Yeah,
it is Ghost Cage, and
this,
I said I was going to
look.
Dude, have you seen inside of this at all?
No.
So I will. Perfect. It looks essentially just like a manga.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that was the reason that I picked it up, because I'm like, oh, I'm so interested in what this is, and I'm gonna be. It's 64 pages, so it's a big one. It was $6, but it was worth it because it was so enjoyable. But I started falling asleep at the end, so I need to reread it because it was super enjoyable.
Yeah.
I it felt very much like what I feel like mangas feel like,
Hmm.
But yeah, I was actually planning on reviewing that, so I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. But the last one that I got, let's see if I can pull it up for you here. It's a digital copy of something, and it is Dark Beach #1. Look how beautiful that cover is. I'm so upset that my comic shop didn't have it because I
Is
really
that
would love to.
the main cover for it?
It's the main cover.
Okay, I think
And so
I saw that at my shop, and I considered getting it, and now I'm regretting I didn't. But it was not that cover. So
dude, so some inconsistent question that we ask on this podcast is, are you going to add that to your pool box? And it's 100% yes on that. I don't want to review it or spoil anything about it, but I actually just read it before we started going on this, and it was fantastic. And it's only
nice.
$2 on Comixology. So actually, that's what originally piqued my interest, was because I'm like, oh, it's cheap, it's a #1. I'll pick it up and see how it is. And honestly, it was the thing that I've enjoyed so far out of everything that I've read last week and this week. And I've been reading some good stuff. There's things that came out this week that, like, or let me say rather, that there was nothing that came out this week that I was particularly really looking forward to, but I found some
Hmm.
really great stuff. So I took some chances with some things. I dropped $2, and I ended up
Yeah.
finding a comic that I'm gonna end up having to drop, $8 just to get the actual physical copy of it.
Oh yeah, and it
Uh,
looks like it's only two. There's only gonna be 2 issues for it.
oh, really?
At least I'm looking at the Amazon right now. It just says 1 of 2, Dark Beach. So
Okay, maybe it
uh,
will be.
I
I
might
mean,
be
the
wrong,
story.
but
It, I mean, maybe the second one could be big. Maybe it's just the two that listed at the moment, because they might just be adding it later. Because I know you can do the pre-order for issue 2 at the moment, so that might just be what that is. But yeah, I would definitely recommend checking them out. I didn't list like anybody's name or like did a bad job, but that last one's from Behemoth, and there's been some other great things that I've read from Behemoth. Behemoth is also doing, I believe, that Heavy Metal Drummer, which is like an incredibly trippy, surreal, sci-fi
yeah,
alien, horror thing. It's yeah. So yeah, man,
I've
I'm just
confirmed I'm incorrect. It is not 1 of 2.
okay.
There's yeah. Always look at League of Comic Geeks. They tell you the future.
Shout out to League of Comic Geeks. They do. That's where I saw that's like so much stuff about Silver Coin and where's the farthest place from here.
Yeah,
But yeah.
that's
Anyways,
awesome,
but
man.
what did you get?
What did I get? Well, it was mostly a Marvel week for me, which is not always a
It's not a bad thing.
I like when I have a good mix of like Marvel and indie stuff. But I had one indie which I'm going to show last. But the new Darth Vader came out this week. This is a variant cover. This is one I actually, as far as variant covers go, I expect the value of it to increase just based on its cover. So here's the main cover for it. I always get 2 Darth Vaders. I don't know why. Well, other than I do. I want and then here's Star Wars. Star Wars came out this week as well. Both issues, 22. I haven't gotten into them yet, and I kind of want to reread the 21 for each of those before I get into these ones. But they're still Crimson Reign tie-ins, which have been fun. Other than I haven't really been enjoying what I talked about last week with Bounty Hunters, how that's ending, but it's probably something I need to sit with. I also picked up my last issue. I just stopped getting this in my pull box because I don't really read that, and I get it more for my son. But it's the Miles Morales issue number 37. So that's that one. This is the last one I'm getting, and it's exiting my pull box. And I will, if I catch up on it, it'll be on Marvel Unlimited. And then the one and only indie comic I got this week the finale of Last Flight Out. So I'm pretty stoked on this. I'll probably read it tonight, and I'll probably read it a few times, and probably review the series next week.
Nice.
And I have a surprise. Haha.
Whoa.
Well, you already know about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought you meant for me. I'm like, wait, it's your birthday. Did you get yourself a cake from me? My God.
No. Well, I did. This is something I kind of splurged on myself for my birthday because we talked about last week thumbing through just what your comic book shop has to offer that's just sitting on the shelves or sitting in their boxes. And my shop has like kind of an archive section in the middle of their shop where they have some back issues. And I think I've talked about here too that I'm reading back through my favorite Moon Knight series that Charlie Houston put out. And I got to the issue where the Punisher makes an appearance and they talk about some history that they have together. And it was just like super fun. I'm like, well, I don't actually know that history because I don't think I haven't read that much Moon Knight other than some like really, really old ones when he first came around. And this is from the early 90s. But I bought myself 4 issues. And this is a story arc called Blood Brothers. And these covers are just fascinating. You got Punisher on that one. Look what he's doing to the Moon Knight up top.
He's shooting through it.
He's shooting through it.
What a bad man.
But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to go through these. But yeah,
so that's a great issue.
Yeah. So and the reason I say I splurged is because the first 2, so issues 35 and 36 here, are in near mint condition, so they were a little bit pricey. They even have like their hardbacks in them when I got them. These last 2 are probably in just like fair condition. They don't have a board in with them. And then I was also just look at the back covers of these. This is what I love about picking up just random old issues.
You just see like what was for sale back then.
Yeah. Whoa. And it's just like, man, I had that
rules.
stuff. So yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so I'm pretty excited to have those and dig into them and just all the craze surrounding Moon Knight right now because of the show, and might as well keep digging. So,
dude, but yeah, he's so good. He's such an interesting character.
He is.
Yeah.
There's actually I don't know if I told you this, but like a few months ago, I was just digging around because I wanted to get more familiar with Moon Knight before the show came out, and there's a podcast by these 2 Australian guys, I think, who it's completely dedicated to Moon Knight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like the podcast itself?
The podcast itself. I cannot remember what it is called, but I listened to a few episodes of it, and so it's just like if you don't want to read through, their podcast might be a good place to go.
Nice. Shout out to them.
Yeah. So let me actually see if I can find what it's called.
It seems like it was a good pull week for us all. We need to start doing something with DC because we're like literally we're hitting like indie, we're like Behemoth, Image, Scout. Like we'll do all those, but then DC we're like, meh. But
I'm still just really struggling with like I'd much rather just read old DC because I don't know, it's like I've said before, I haven't pulled in a DC comic since probably 2014 because I'll thumb through them, I'll read about them, and I can't get excited about anything that's happening. And I know that there's people out there who are diehard fans and like will disagree with me, but I would say over the last 8 years, DC hasn't done anything comic wise that's really like floated my boat unless somebody's told me like, hey, you need to read this. That's usually when I pick it up.
I wanted to jump on the Suicide Squad when that started, but I missed issue 1, and I couldn't for the life of me get they didn't do a second reprint, or I couldn't get my hands on it, something like that. I just couldn't remember, and then now it's like 14. It's pretty far in, and I'm bummed because I really wish I could have jumped on that and stayed on that. But
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
Hey man, you mind if I talk about this here comic Reign for a little bit?
Go for it, man.
So yeah, I feel bad I didn't mention them off the top who made this, but this is by Joe Hill, David M. Boer, Zoe Thorogood, and Chris Halloran. I'm sorry if I said any of those incorrectly, but Mark, I wanted to show you the cover of issue 3.
Okay.
because I thought it was connecting to something that we'll be talking in, just a theme for our podcast that continues to come up. But if you were to look at this little boy, what does this boy kind of look like?
A vampire.
A vampire. And guess what, Mark? Wouldn't you know that he has some sort of disease where he can't really go out into the sun?
Oh.
So for some reason, it's just vampires are like, just full spoiler for what we're going to be talking about. Almost everything that we're going to be talking about from here to the end of the episode have vampires in it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wow.
Yes.
So except no, I'm going to be talking about Ghost Cage. I should have started with Ghost Cage because Ghost Cage doesn't have any vampires, but I fucked up the order.
That's fine.
So
you're forgiven.
I'm sure if I've mentioned this if I've mentioned this comic before on the podcast, I've probably mentioned the premise of the comic, but it's simply that one day in Colorado it rains shards of glass.
Oh,
and
I remember you telling me about this. Yeah.
So it gets interesting because the one of the how do you say that, the survivors that were following the main protagonist, they're trying to get from one point to another, and obviously a lot of roadways are shut down, communication is shut down because it's continuing to happen. It's continuing to rain shards of glass, and so it's very interesting because a lot of the times in like doomsday comics or whatever, you see it from the perspective of like post the apocalyptic event, right? So it's usually like some person waking up, or like you're just coming in at a camp that's already established or something like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is interesting because it's just following a girl who's, Colorado is pretty sparse, so just walking very long distances trying to keep cover from rains. And it's interesting because cults are popping up, and there's already conspiracy theories about where these came from, and there's rumors of war, but they can't really hear about the war because they don't have any sort of connection to the outside world. So it's super fascinating because, again, even there's an isolated event, which is something that isn't really covered in apocalyptic things. It's usually the whole world is going over at some time or something like that. Well, I mean, I guess that's maybe, there are cases where like Gotham is excommunicated from the rest of society and they can't communicate, but this seems a little bit more isolated and alone from that, just given the setting of Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I will say the writing is a little bit like meh sometimes, but it's the story and the characters. The characters are very well fleshed out. All of them seem like they had a life behind this story. Something that you want to look out for when you're reading stories is like, did this character exist prior to this moment? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, does it have like a rich background? Do they have a personality? All those types of things. And it seems like everybody in here has that sort of reality. And yeah, so I've really been enjoying it. I would recommend when you get when it comes out. I don't know how many issues there are going to be. I would assume it doesn't look like it's wrapping up anytime soon, so I'm assuming 6. But when that's done, I would highly recommend getting the trade paperback, because this will definitely be one you want to just sit and read continuously, because all the issues pick up right after each other, so you can just plow through as one good story.
All right.
Well, what do you got, buddy?
All right. Well, did you still want to talk about your other one real quick?
I can. I figured we'd go back and forth, and then
why don't you get those two out of the way, because we got 2 that we're both talking about. So let's just go 2, 2, and 2.
There we go. We're switching it up.
2 each, so 2 together.
This is the one. I don't know how this slipped my mind when this came out. This was not new to this week. I'm pretty sure it came out last month, or at least at the beginning of this month, maybe last week. There's just that Ghost Cage. It's the mango looking thing. Saw it. So it's very interesting. There's this like,
I really like that art.
Yeah, dude, it's fantastic. The whole thing is wonderful. The writing, the lettering, we rarely ever talk about lettering on this, but the lettering in this is really fantastic. It's it's simple, but there's times where it's switched up. I mean, you can see it even in here. I'll try to get as well, it's kind of hard, but let me just say, for those of you who can't see the comic in my hands right now, that there are different styles of writing and that obviously show emotions and all those types of things. And it's the how do you say this? The letters are utilized well to actually tell emotion and animate things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's about, there's this hyper super technologically advanced company, and one of the scientists makes this AI called Alex, which is this guy right here. He's this gentleman. Oh, this is very hard to do on the backward screen. That older gentleman he's actually a hologram, but he somehow created this guy, and he is in charge of taking down, I can't tell if he's on here, but there's a monster that needs to be destroyed. Yeah, it's super fascinating.
Yeah.
I literally feel like a child talking to like an adult right now about, like, then there's this guy and he does this, and there's oh and all that sound of just being like, it's just so nice to, like, we read a decent amount of comics, and it's so nice to like read something that is just like, wow, this is so like just new, and
Yeah.
I think because it's so manga influenced, and that's not really my world, people from manga would maybe look at it and be like, oh, you're just kind of ripping off whatever. But as somebody who doesn't have any feet in that world, it's just a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
So,
well, I like seeing art take from art. And so that's what when you were talking about it, that's what kind of interests me about it, like kind of adapting the manga style, because I mean, manga worldwide is far more popular than like how America does comics.
oh yeah, absolutely.
But like, it's also, when you're raised in the West, it's really hard. We're not really taught to accept change. And so I like when we have things like changes integrated in subtly. So
yeah,
that's cool, man.
this is definitely going to be in my pool box. I think there's only like 3. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a long run, so I'm very excited to see where this thing goes.
That's awesome.
And even if they are, like I said, this is $6, but even if it is, this is definitely 2 comics worth of material, so I'm not even upset, because I'm literally going to have to go back and reread it, just because the length of it, I don't say put me to sleep, but I fell asleep because it just took me so long to get through, because it's so good. And it is dense, but it's not a complicated dense. It's just, you're clearly jumping into a world, and there's just a lot to pick up on,
Yep. Well, right on. Well, let me step into my first review. Okay, so this series just wrapped up last month, I believe. I think I think this actually came out in February, but for some reason my shop didn't get my copy of the 3rd issue, so I got my 4th issue before I got my 3rd issue, and I was still waiting for my 3rd issue to come in. And wouldn't you know it, I forgot that they were still bringing it into me, and I ended up getting 2 of the 3rd issue. So, but they're sharing the same
nice
sleeve. So, but yeah, it's called Cross to Bear. So this is issue 3. Let's do this side so you can see it. This is a very fun Western series. It's basically Jack the Ripper goes to the West. So if you're familiar with like the history of Jack the Ripper, the basis is that there's like a string of 5 murders in 1888. And then again, like the same style of murders came up like 5 years later. But there's always this question of like, if that is the same person, what was happening in the middle time? And so this series starts in 1889, and Jack the Ripper has fled London and come to the American West. So it's a fun, classic Western tale that was really, really fun for the first 3 issues and probably about half to 3/4 of the 4th issue.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Is that good or bad?
Well, I'll go into a little bit more depth, but basically the background of it is the guys who have this cross to bear are 2 brothers, and they're part of an ancient order, and they, I believe, are kind of immortal in a sense, or at least like they can only be killed, but they will not die naturally, and they don't age. They're not vampires, but these two brothers are part of an order that looks like it dates back to the Crusades, right? But here they are in the American West. The younger brother shows up. He needs help from his older brother. His older brother gets looped into it because his wife gets murdered by Jack the Ripper. So then it becomes like kind of this chase of Jack the Ripper, and then turns out Jack the Ripper is a vampire. Which I don't think that this is the first time in like pop culture that we've seen Jack the Ripper become a vampire, because I believe that there is a style of vampire called a Ripper, and they're like the type of vampire who like they don't just like bite and suck your blood, they like tear you apart, they rip you apart. And so I think that they're trying to get at that, but he was still a classic Jack the Ripper, and you know he cuts throats, and he was kind of bored of being a vampire, which was, and like when it got to that point, it was like, okay, cool, like you wrapped it up, Jack the Ripper's a vampire, and then they threw in this whole extra thing at the end where you're just like, where did this come from? I'm really confused. I don't know what's going on here. And it was kind of like, have you ever been in, I know you've been on a plane, but have you ever been on a landing plane? It's coming in, the flight's been smooth, it's just been really, really good, and then they're going down and you feel the wheels touch the ground, you're like, cool, we're hitting the ground, but then all of a sudden it like bounces a little bit. Well, it just seems like that's what happened with this series. It was coasting super, super well. They got to the landing and they hit a bump in the landing, which caused it to go like this. And I'm just disappointed by it, to be honest. I
want to know what it is. Well, I don't want you to spoil it. Maybe just remember that and tell me off air what happens.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the ending, but the ending honestly just kind of, it ruined the series for me.
No, I was gonna ask if did you still enjoy it though?
Yeah, it was. So again, it's just there's more to look at in a comic than the story. You also are looking at, you mentioned lettering. We never talk about lettering, but like yes, the whole construct of the comic series in general is brilliant. Like I love the artwork, love the lettering, love the coloring, especially when people are able to use the coloring to bring you into the scene and make you feel like you're in there. You get a lot of that in Cross to Bear. And it was a very fun series. I was very excited. Like, you know, after issue 2, I was like, I'm definitely going to finish this out. I just loved where it was going, but sadly, I don't like how it finished. So, I would say if it ever comes up for free on like Comixology, like give it a read through, but I wouldn't say spend your money on it.
Huh. And that's from Aftershock, right?
And it's from Aftershock.
So I read a series from Aftershock called it was called Knock 'em Dead, and they had a similar thing too, where it was the last issue like time jumped and just told a really weird story, and I was just like, what? And I wonder if that's just kind of their thing. They like weird hooks at the end of stories. I mean, I've had a lot of great stuff from Aftershock. That story itself was great outside of the kind of the weird ending.
And then
it's hard to write an ending.
It's hard to write an ending, and I don't know. I wanted to make sure I wasn't like the only person who was disappointed, and so I checked out another review site and read or watched his review on it, and he said the same thing. It was just like the way he phrased it was kind of like watching the last Lord of the Rings movie. It's just like pick an ending, like just pick a point to stop at, and so it was a very fun series. I'll give it that. But like if anybody listening chooses to read it, let me know if you were also disappointed by the ending.
There we go.
I would love to know. And then before we get into what I think we're both fairly excited about, let me get to my last review, which is still more vampires. Cult of Icarus. This is the one that came out last week. But yeah, I was able to read these back to back because I skimmed through this when it came out, and it was fun. let me see what I wrote here. Okay, so like first issue was pretty like it was just fun. It was a familiar vampire story. It's just like nothing's changed. There's vampires, there's vampire killers, and then there's like this chosen one that the story you can tell like this is the focal point. This person's the focal point of this whole story. And so while it fits into like the regular like vampire routine of yes, killers and vampires, I think what's really great about this series and what they did really good in issue 1 is they set the tone and the vibe of the series very well. The style of the art really fits how the story is being told because it's supposed to be like modern day, and there's kind of this like punk rock, kind of like 1980s punk rock vibe to it. And I feel like the artwork, I mean, you can kind of see it on this first cover.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of tells it all that there's this kind of rock and roll aspect to it, and so it's not really adding anything new to like vampire lore, but it is just appropriating it, I think, for like modern day. And like even here by? Too, this is put out by Scout Comics, and the writer is Jenna Lynn Wright. Okay. This is my first go with Jenna, so but I really like it. I really feel like issue 1's really set the tone, and then the follow-up of issue 2, which again I'll show it here on motorcycles, it I think that if you have a really good issue 1 that really starts setting that tone like this does, I think your issue 2 should just kind of level up. I don't think it should continue on. I think it should just go, you're riding this plane and then you just move up and you're riding on a new plane. And while we're dealing with the familiar lore of vampires, issue 2 just creatively, there we go.
There you go.
I was trying to combine creatively and creative together. My bad. But this one became a lot less about like the first issue had a lot of action in it surrounding the main character, and the second one just had a lot more dialogue, and there's just a lot more like world building and character building. And by the end of issue 2, you're just like, okay, I'm ready to see what dirty shit these people are about to get into. I'm just ready for it. Like, give it to me now. So, yeah, I really liked it. It's going to remain in my pull box. I don't know how many issues it's going to be. I'm guessing it's going to be 5 because that seems pretty status quo for Scout Comics. They do typically 4 or 5 arcs and then put out a. Actually, do they? I don't think they do trade paperbacks.
They do. I've seen a couple. Okay. Yeah, they're probably not as common because they're such a small indie that's probably uncommon for them. Depending on, I would assume that the amount of trade paperbacks that they sell is, in relation to how many single copies they sell. So that's probably where a lot of the comic book stores have to make their decisions.
Yeah, I'm going to show a little bit of the artwork here on the inside, but see how it's just kind of like grungy.
Yeah, I love it. I think I might get into this.
Yeah, so that's one thing that, again, it's just, if the artwork can suck me in, I'm probably going to get sucked in by the writing as well and the dialogue. So
yeah, art gets me too. I'm a big fan of good art.
All right.
Well,
I think we both do. Let's do it. We starting with the little guys?
Yeah, let's start with the little guys. Do we have the same cover for this?
I don't know if we do. Here's mine.
Just for people who we don't. For people who listen to the audio version, I'm sorry that you can't see these covers, but yeah, make sure to follow us on Facebook and on YouTube, and you can check them out there. But
yeah, we do like to post our comics. So and
on Instagram, all that stuff. You can wherever on social media. Well, do you want to kick it off on this one? I guess
why not?
Just talking a whole bunch. So you want to just keep talking a whole bunch?
Yeah, let me get. Okay, so yeah, this is for people who have been listening. You might already remember that this is written by Jeff Lemire. Lemire. I'll figure it out.
We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm terrible at trying to figure. That's another thing too. I'm sorry I didn't mention the creators of Cross to Bear. I can't pronounce their names. Like they're I think that they're an international crew, maybe from like another country, but all their last names are like maybe Slavic. I'm not entirely certain, but I didn't want to do injustice to butchering their names, so I shied away from that. So I apologize to everybody and the creators of Cross to Bear.
I'm sure they forgive you.
I'm sure do. They sure do. But yeah, so we love Jeff, and we also love that he chooses great artists to work with. And Dustin Nguyen's art in this, just, it's so well done. Like I mean, it's mostly black and white, but what I love is the careful and meticulous use of like the coloring. Mm-hmm. Like whenever you do see color on any of these panels, it's telling so much about whoever's in that frame. And I don't know if you noticed, I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead, I guess, to getting into the art with this, but in issue 2, there's kind of two of the main characters. When they're first introduced, they're standing to what I can assume is the same wall. Mm-hmm. But Romy, who I believe is the main character, or like the main protagonist, he's standing next to this wall that has a lot of like kid drawings on it, like done with chalk or paint or something. But it's a little bit, the coloring on the wall is a little bit more vibrant, and mm-hmm. I'm just going to pull it out. Sure. Where are you at, Romy? Oh, I passed him.
I'm glad that you remembered the names. There's so many of these little buggers in this story, these little monsters.
So yeah, so everybody watching, it's pretty much all black and white, but then you get to stills like this. And these colors are very, very like warm, mm-hmm. and it's just, you kind of, it kind of gives like this childlikeness to him. Like that's one of the things too, is that the main characters in here, they're all children vampires. Mm-hmm. But then you get over to like Billy, and it's like they almost use the coloring on his wall as kind of a foreshadow, because the color tones go a little bit colder and darker. They're not as like warm and vibrant as they were when Romy showed up. And like that's other than like the blood spills, those are the only other colors used in this issue as far as I can tell. But man, are you like hooked on Little Monsters?
I'm probably not hooked, but I'm very much so, because it's only 3, right?
I think it is only 3, yeah.
I'm very much so looking forward to the last issue, because, and I really wanted to say this about this series, is it feels like a poem or an epic. You know what I mean? Because it's just it's telling of one story, but it's interesting. I'm going to say it this way. It's like the events that we're witnessing seem to be in the background of the story that's being told. So 4. Okay.
Yeah.
But does that make sense?
Yeah.
That, like the overarching like narrator bubbles, like they're telling such a story that like I don't know. It's not that you're like, obviously, it's just you're clearly witnessing a part of a day in the life of these people, but it's a day that seems significant.
It seems significant, and then there's still just so much mystery surrounding the characters still. But while we're like still getting the character building out of these main children, we're having, like humans are showing up that they haven't seen in a while. Mm-hmm. I think, and
they seem confused, and
they seem yeah. Well, and then also, did you look at I don't know, does the back of your cover have a quote from the script on it? Because like mine has this quote on it. It says, "They never told us."
Yeah, same.
And that's a line that the character Billy uses.
Man, look at you remembering all these names.
Yeah, but Billy encounters this human and tastes him, and the first thing he says was, "They never told us." And it's because he'd never tasted an adult human. I don't really know if there was kid humans already around. They're probably just surviving off of rats and whatever they can find.
Right.
But the whole story, though, it's just like, it's very eerie. It's very energetic. It seems like it just is going to bounce back and forth between Romy and Billy, and their takes. And like, Romy is the leader of their pack. He's the oldest of them all. But he also just still looks, I think he looks the youngest out of all of them as well. At least.
Yeah, he might. There's like, they do vary in age.
Yeah. But yeah, and then there's a lot of foreshadowing. Like, you can, and that's what I like too, is like, there's a lot of foreshadowing in that, like, okay, with the way they use the colors with Romy and Billy in their first scenes when they're introduced in this issue, you can tell that there's something bright and shiny about him, not just that he's the one with blonde hair. And then Billy, there's something dark's coming his way. That's why I think the color is toned down. And it just, I don't know, I loved it. I loved issue 1. I love issue 2. And just to put a little pun on it, I'm going to go ahead and say that Little Monsters has sunk their teeth into me.
Wow. You got the Little Monsters vampire thing. Yeah. I mean, for some reason, you and I are up to our shaloglis,
our teeth,
up to our teeth, up to our vampire teeth and vampire stories. And this is, what I'm appreciating is that I'm not a huge fan of the like Transylvanian, like, kind of vampire.
Yeah.
And these seemed a little bit more of like along the like lines of like goth vampire.
Yeah.
Just like emo kids who want to suck blood, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of that. It's just one of those things of just like you're saying, there's so much mystery around it. I'm just like, man, what is this world? How does it, like, what are they missing? What's, like, there's a human and he's talking about having a camp. What are they, like, what's that? And how long has, because correct me if I'm wrong, but they've just been waiting for like a century. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah.
So that means that like human civilization hasn't been able to pull back from whatever happened in a century, which, I mean, that's saying a lot. Because humans, once we settle, we can build upon that pretty rapidly, especially if we have prior knowledge, you know, and it's that. But I guess maybe some of the people in this world don't seem to have an understanding of like the world that had happened before. Or am I thinking of something? I think I might be thinking of something else that I read. I actually am thinking of something else that I read. Never mind. Forget that I said that.
Forgotten.
That was Dark Beach, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for me, I mean, I'm definitely going to ride all the way out to the end. I'm loving the art. I think Jeff Lemire was just like, I don't know how to do colors, so you need to do this. But not even that. I think there's a lot like, this is a lot weightier than, it's not heavy, the art by any means really, but it's heavier than Lemire could do, but typically does in his art.
Well, yeah, and it's like, you know, you look, you know, at what we recently finished with May's book, and he did story and art for that, and it's a little bit more sketchy, and I don't mean that in like it's sketchy as in like you know, don't go there. It's just like, it's more like he just sketched it out on a pad. And like, yeah, he probably tweaked it and all that, but it and like, that's also just like his style of art, which, and he's going to use his art when he deems it right. But when he has a story that he knows he needs, like more boldness in the art in a way, just more weight, as you said, just thicker art, more expressionistic art. I'm still just stuck on like Primordial. The artwork, man, the artwork in that. So, but now let's not go back down another Jeff hole, because we get.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is definitely staying in my pool box, man. So
same.
Very much looking forward to it. The ending, let's just say this, I won't spoil it, but the ending of this I'm like, all right, well, gotta get into issue number 3. Not that I wasn't going to, but just how it ends, I'm just like, damn. It's such a good last 2 frames.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, that's I wanted to touch on that because those last few frames on the last page, when Romy's just regular image and the person you encounter says, "Who are you?" and he just kind of lifts his lip up and shows one of his fangs.
Yeah.
Like that was just brilliant transition.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's fantastic.
Well, and it also just it embodies Romy's kind of innocence as
Mm,
well, because he's not like he's not like a dog growling at you. Like he's just
mm,
like, yeah, here's what I am. Here's one of my things. And
yeah.
yeah, so it was great. But yeah, I'm excited to continue on that one. We got, what did I say, 4 issues total? Yep. All right.
All right.
Well, last but not least, I would say, you wanna kick this one off?
Sure. I should have went with little for the other ones if I was kicking them off. But yeah, this is so oh my goodness, I'm blanking on what's this. Oh, this is from Vault. So man, we're all over the shop this week. We got Behemoth, we had Vault, we had Scout, we had Marvel. Hot damn. Good job, everybody.
Good job.
So this is West of Sundown, #1 by Tim Seeley and Aaron Campbell, drawn by Jim Terry, colored by Triana Farrell, lettered by Crank. That's pretty sick. So I'll just say the premise first before I start telling you what it is about. It seems to just be that there is a vampire raised from the dead that was in a slumber for some time. The opening is kind of left a little bit ambiguous. It seems that there's this Civil War soldier standing who has a ridiculous name, by the way. His first name is Dooley. Yeah, there it is. His name is O'Shaughnessy. Dooley O'Shaughnessy. It's a ridiculous name. It's fantastic.
Somebody's offended.
No, I mean it's just I just read it. I'm like, what the hell? I'm also not like the strongest reader in the world, so a word that looks like that just threw me through a loop. But he's a Civil War soldier, and seems to be standing over graves, and there seems to be something. You can already tell that things are already weird because he's dragging a body that doesn't seem to be fully dead, even though it's dead. It seems to be a living dead situation. And then he digs up this vampire woman who
I gotta say, it's interesting you mentioned that, but go on.
Sure. But digs up this vampire woman, and then there's a hard jump to 10 years in the future, which is, I'm like, oh, that was kind of like jarring. I was expecting them to kind of keep jumping decades, but they just hard jump to 10 years in the future, and that's where the story picks up. So she's Mr. O'Doul. I'm going to just call him Dooley. Dooley has been helping the vampire mistress, whose name is Miss Constance Dar Abend.
Well, there's a term for him in a vampire lore. He's the familiar.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I learned something from watching What We Do in the Shadows with my girlfriend.
That was a great show.
It is a good show.
Are you talking about have you watched the movie?
No, I haven't. But I heard I would like it.
Yeah. I mean, if you like the show, you'll probably like the movie.
I am a big fan of this kind of art. It's cartoony, but it's also like a little, like you were saying about the other one, grungy. It's not like super and again, this isn't like, I'm not like I said, I like this. It's not like super clean and like very pristine. It's very like, I don't want to say fast lines because that's not it either, but it's I mean, there's just a lot of like just really good like jagged shading over clear drawn lines, and it's like I'm a huge fan of that.
Oh yeah, no, and that's very, very intentional because it's separating out the main character Constance from like the monstrosity of humanity. That's how I read into it anyway. Because like if you look, just look at the panels, and every time that she's in it, she very much stands out. She's very pale, red dress, dark hair. But then you just look at everybody else, and it's like, you don't really want to stay on the panels like where Dooley is. He's not like an attractive person to look at. But then when you get into the future, he becomes a little bit more attractive. I mean, this page is brilliant. By the way,
yeah, that's a very, very good use of a splash page.
Yeah. But yeah, I like that the art is being used in contrast to the main character, and then the only times that you see her matching the rest of the art is like here when she becomes the monster again. And a big tagline of this comic too, it's on the front here.
Yeah.
A young country still determining its monsters. And again, that's why I said like it's interesting that you mentioned like a possible Living Dead situation, because I don't think we're just going to be stuck with vampires in this series. I think that this is a full on like we're going to see the Living Dead, we're going to see possibly mummies, we're going to see Frankensteins and werewolves. I think we're going to get the whole shebang here. So I'm pretty excited, and yeah, man, just the cover too, like we said last week. I bet you anybody who saw it sitting on the shelf was like, I'll take that. Like,
oh yeah, for sure.
Just like an old movie,
phenomenal.
Yeah, old movie poster.
Right, a Grindhouse film. That's what it felt like.
Oh yeah, totally. But yeah, it's a Western horror vampire story as far as we know. But I think it's a monster story. I don't think it's just vampire.
Yeah, I don't know why in this context I'm stoked about like what I would call like the American horror mythology, or whatever that is. Just these weird tropes that we have and these weird horror creatures that we keep coming back to. I'm really, and obviously part of it is because a lot of them are in the public domain and people can use them however they want. But it's really cool to get to see, how all these different artists interpret or utilize these things of having, because I keep going back to this comic that I haven't even finished reading. I need to go back and finish it. But the All Nighters, which is by Chip Zdarsky, where it's vampires in a diner. And it's like you can have those stories and it makes sense because of the lore of vampires, but you can also have something like this where they're living for a long time and they have their familiar helping them and all of those other things, which is again true to the lore and true to the canon of vampires.
Well, and that's another thing too, and this is something I'm going to say for all the vampire stuff that we've talked about today. I like that there's just the assumption now that like, okay, there's not really more we can add to the lore of vampires. It's been done for 300-400 years. Like I think vampire lore finds its origin in like the late 17th century. And even back then, like we didn't see the pasty whites until like the mid 18th century. So it had about 100 years before we have like what we know as like the modern vampire. But it's just it is this comic especially is just assuming like you already know the lore of vampires, and I think it's also just going to assume as it goes on, as probably more monsters get revealed, that the lore is already there, and so they're not trying to toy with that. They're trying to use that as like this is the norm, and we're going to tell a really good story. And I do think that this first issue too, though, like at times it's I do have like one qualm, and I think it's going to be fixed, but it just there's just such a lack of depth of the character building so far. But I think that this first issue really is just it's more of the tease to it, like we're going to get into this more, and you do see that. And I also like love the title. I don't know if I said this last week, but I thought about it for a little bit. I thought about it for a little bit because I was telling my wife about it, and she's like, "Well, west of sundown, what does that mean?" I'm like, "Think about it. West of sundown. That's dark. That's night. It's always night." And so I thought that even just the title now to me is just like that's so clever and like genius that's how they're approaching it. But yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a fun read to me, and we'll see how issue 2 goes.
How many issues?
Let's see here.
But yeah,
I'm finding that we need to be more prepared on how many issues.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, I'm really hoping that the covers do remain kind of in the same like Grindhouse as theme and whatever. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying getting to explore this mythology. Yeah. So if you haven't gotten it, go pick it up.
Yeah.
And if you have picked it up, good on you. You did it. I hope you enjoy reading it like we did.
So far, I don't know if there's going to be. I mean, there has to be more because it did end on a cliffhanger. So maybe,
right, yeah. Obviously,
I will say I hope this doesn't become one of those like series that's like, oh, we're just going to release the next one when we can.
Yeah,
like you see that sometimes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's how Dark Blood was. It felt when we were reading Dark Blood.
That's why I missed so many issues.
Yeah, because it felt so sporadic.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it was, but it just felt that way. And I guess the fact that it was true for both of us means it probably was sporadic then.
Well, and another one that you got me on, I don't know if you've continued with it, but We Don't Kill Spiders.
Yeah, that's also Vault.
No, it's Black Caravan, which is Scout.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry. I actually have that up here or somewhere. Yeah, actually right here. Look at that.
Which I do think the next issue is coming out in the next couple weeks.
I know I have issue 4 somewhere that I haven't read. And I really enjoyed. Yeah, I mean, we both really enjoyed that. It's good Viking horror. So
yeah,
actually,
it's fun.
I might try to. I got so much stuff I have to do tonight after this, but I would like to read that at some point in time. Actually, I'm looking at it. No, that's another one. I have so many comics.
Yeah. Well, how about we land this plane better than Cross to Bear?
Oh no, buddy, don't say that.
I'm sorry. I'm a little mad about how it ended, and so I need to know if anybody else feels the same as me.
Well, hit us up in the comments, everybody. Well, I guess since you open this bad boy, I'll close it. How does that sound?
All right, let's do it. Or you do it.
Thanks, pals, for watching along, listening along, however you follow us. Make sure that you follow us on all the socials, on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're on all of them. You can find me at Stoned and Nerdy on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find Mark as Mark Dills on Instagram. And do you have a TikTok?
Yeah, my TikTok's Mark and Sixth, but I've been playing with our TikTok more lately. My TikTok's more just for like fun stuff that I'm just like, I'm bored. I'm going to throw something together and maybe get a few likes and follows and who knows. But TikTok's a weird world, man.
Yeah, I'm letting you dig into that one. But we forgot to say this up to the top, but big shout out and thank you to the IWEP network for hosting us and having us. Anthony was one of the people who commented earlier mentioning the Multiverse of Madness trailer. Yep.
Yeah.
So go. I can't remember what show they have on tonight, but there'll be another episode of one of the podcasts on the network tonight. It's either Tornado Tags or I think it's Tornado Tag or Truth Behind Illusion. Either way, check out IWEP Network on Facebook, and then they'll have whatever shows going on there. So thank you for everything. Thank you for hanging out with us, guys. Make sure to follow and subscribe and like all the stuff. And Mark, are you ready do you want to say the catchphrase this week that I came up with last time as the sign off?
What was it? We'll see you next poll week.
Same
poll time, same poll place.
There we go. I'm sure. I thought it was channel. Who knows?
Same poll channel.
It doesn't matter. All righty. All right. Have a good one, folks. Make sure that you enjoy your week and pool something. Oh, that's a bad thing to say.
Bye, everybody.